This is GKW. Welcome to another edition of Good Karma Wrestling. I'm Gabe Neitzel from ESPN Milwaukee, and we have Jonathan Hood, ESPN 1000, with us this week as Brian Rowitz is on assignment. Special Tuesday edition of GKW. So, Continental Classic is yet to kick off, as it will on Wednesday night on AEW Dynamite. But that is where we begin. Hood is Full Gear. What do you think is the biggest story coming out of the Full Gear pay-per-view for AEW?
I think at least one of them, Gabe, is the dominance of the Death Riders of Jon Moxley. And the reason why is because Jon Moxley had a great matchup against Orange Cassidy for the AEW championship. And if Orange would have won, that would have shifted the balance of what's happening in AEW. To me, it's really Team AEW against the Death Riders, and Jon Moxley was able to win. Now, I think that the reason why I say it's the Death Riders is because of the aftermath. It was confusing at the end because just the pinfall for Jon Moxley had been fine, but just all these moving parts, here comes Christian Cage and, here's Darby Allin at the end and there's Jay White. I guess they're trying to set up for the future, but I just think that the whole company and the centerpiece is about the Death Riders.
Yeah, that after that final bell rang, it became a pretty big overbooked mess. And I'm guessing, and look, I think you could have just gotten away because if Darby's the next in line, which I am inferring from Darby, who apparently did the stunt himself, crashing his car into the Death Rider's truck. I'm assuming that, okay, Darby Allin's up next. He's going to be the next challenger to the Death Riders, to Jon Moxley for Team AEW. And I read something, I don't know if it was from Fightful, if it was a report from the Wrestling Observer, where it necessarily came from, but apparently what they were going for was just, hey, look at all these potential contenders there are. And it just became, again, if I still know, I watched the product, I know that Christian Cage is holding that contract, and at any point he could throw a wrench into this. He didn't need to necessarily come out. I mean, I know Jay White after his victory, and Hangman Page is there. But I know these people are there, and I know some of our criticism is, okay, who is going to be challengers? Who are, sometimes depending upon who the world champion has been, you actually have some challengers, but just give me one. If you're going to tease one to continue the story, you just needed the one. You could have done the Death Riders going out, victoriously. You leave Orange Cassidy there in a bloody mess after losing the match, and the Death Riders march out to their truck, and then Darby Allin crashes in. You didn't need everything else around it, but I'm with you in terms of the Death Riders. I didn't love the way that they went into the pay-per-view. I thought the Dynamite was not the best go-home show, but they look strong coming out of the pay-per-view. And you're curious as to, okay, what happens next? And because you have a member of the Death Riders participating in the Continental Classic, as you have Claudio Castagnoli is in the gold division there, they're going to have their hands in multiple facets, which is, I think, the next thing. They can kind of start branching out and touching other aspects of AEW, because part of AEW has been, well, this is here, and then we compartmentalize, and this is here, and everything kind of is his own little box. But it seems like to me the overall story for the Death Riders is, okay, if you want AEW to change, it just can't be this little section of AEW. It has to be a broader reach. And I think that that's what they're going to start to do with Mox, with Claudio now in this thing, and we'll see who else gets involved as we continue to move along.
Gabe, I was thinking since the pay-per-view on Saturday about the business model of AEW. And I want to say up front that I thought that the pay-per-view was an A- to a B+, just because we had all this action. The UFC style card layout, whether you have a lot of matches, a lot of quality matches, that's how AEW does their business. But I was thinking about this after the pay-per-view. I said, I think that AEW takes heed and they really take seriously these fake TV numbers that they get, their ratings, which are not the real number. But again, this is what they have to go for. And I kind of think that instead of doing the way WWE would do it, in which it is, here's the card, here's Jon Moxley over Orange Cassidy. I can't wait to see what happens Wednesday. And then the setup of Christian Cage and Jay White and Darby Allin. That way you have an exciting Wednesday because it's the aftermath of what happened for the pay-per-view. What they do is, and we've seen this more times than once, it is, here's the show, But then here's a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat, just so you know this is where we're going, and you can't wait to see what happens on Wednesday. Well, it's almost like AEW saying, man, we have some big time numbers and a lot of people paying for our pay-per-views, but it doesn't resonate on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we just want people to know, like, if you're interested, here's what you can expect on Wednesday. Instead of doing it on Wednesday, we'll do it at the end of the pay-per-view, which is odd, but it seems like there's a lot more people interested in the actual pay-per-view than their weekly TV.
Well, that's
fair?
because
Fair?
I think that's super fair because we talk about this a lot with AEW. The one thing AEW does is they put together the best pay-per-views if you are a fan of wrestling. Because a lot of times with the pay-per-view, it's the culmination of a story, right? And WWE is fantastic at putting together those stories for week-to-week television. And then you have the cards, and under Triple H, they've been, shorter cards, 6-match cards. Mm-hmm. And for AEW, like, they just put on a wrestling show. They put on wrestling shows for their pay-per-views. And again, when you're culminating stories, there's only one place for these stories to culminate because it's professional wrestling. It's in the ring.
Yeah.
And for WWE, I mean, their pay-per-views, their PLEs, they're fine. They're big ones, Survivor Series, because you have War Games and the Royal Rumble and Mania and Money in the Bank and SummerSlam. Like, those big wrestling shows are huge because you're going to have your best matches, all that. We have a hard time picking out what that tentpole AEW pay-per-view is because they're all kind of the same. They can't wait to get to the pay-per-view because they know they're going to put on just a tremendous wrestling show, maybe tell some stories within the ring the way that we saw Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher do. But it's just mostly going to be 4 hours of action-packed wrestling, and the show itself is going to be really good because the one thing that AEW is really good at, they're really good at wrestling. Once you get in that ring, they have so many talented men and women that they are going to put on a tremendous show.
It is the equivalent of a no skips album. Think about your favorite album, and it's just like you might like a cut or two, but you have that one album. It's like, dude, don't even touch it. It's fine. Just let it play. While I drive, just let it play. It might be a little less than your favorite hit, but the point is, like, it's not skippable. It's not like, oh, this sucks. That's what AEW is, because look at the card. Just talk about the main card. Gabe, everything was solid. Everything made sense. And again, the question is nothing against AEW, but we're saying, like, the way it's all lines up in the pay-per-view is disconnected to how it lines up on Collision and Dynamite at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because where their weaknesses is telling those stories. And that's what week-to-week television is, to culminate at the end. And when you don't have super strong stories, then you just start relying on the pay-per-views. The pay-per-views have been fantastic. They have some stories, like we mentioned. The Death Riders are really good. Whatever's going on with the Don Callis family, I'm interested in. Especially with Kyle Fletcher winning, especially with Konosuke Takeshita winning. Like, the Don Callis family, they're starting to bring up these really strong heel factions right now in AEW. Okay, how do you respond with babyface? You didn't need, to your point, you probably didn't need to do all that stuff at the end. You could start showing some of that, and instead of spamming it in a 5-minute period, you could have done a better job of kind of spreading it over 2 hours, sprinkle in the Darby Allin, sprinkle in Jay White on Dynamite, sprinkle in Christian Cage on Collision, and have all of these, potential contenders. And now you have to wonder if, I just assumed that Darby Allin was going to be that next contender, but is he? Because now he's in the Continental Classic. So if he is representing the Gold League, he's going to be busy at World's End. He's not going to be able to take on Jon Moxley. So everything kind of gets jumbled anyway because you did this Selection Sunday type thing for your Continental Classic, which, again, it is one of the best things AEW does because it doesn't require much storytelling, and they're just going to be putting on banger after banger after banger on every Wednesday and Saturday as they have this tournament.
I would also say that, a close second would be just the crowning achievement of Kyle Fletcher and his victory over Will Ospreay. It was my favorite match on AEW Full Gear. That's one. But number two, just take a look at the entrance. When Fletcher comes out, he's got the crown on, and my God, have you and I seen a lot of wrestlers with crowns on before, right? But this is Kyle Fletcher that is calling himself the proto something. It was not the prototype.
No.
He has a nickname that I thought was interesting, Proto Star or something along those lines. But I mean, bottom line is that the match was fantastic, and so you wonder, will AEW build stars? There's a star. They built it right there in that pay-per-view because of how great that match was and how Ospreay lost clean. Now they have a star in Kyle Fletcher, a friend of the program, by the way, Kyle Fletcher.
Yeah, Proto Star is the correct nickname right now for Kyle Fletcher.
So
I'm
that's prototype and megastar, protostar.
Protostar. There you go. That's Kyle Fletcher. And I think you've got a lot of interesting things coming out of a lot of the different matches. What is next for Mercedes Moné? Because they kind of skipped over, are they going to continue the breakup with her and Camille? I mean, her winning over Chris Statlander, to me, that kind of puts Statlander in the rear view, and she probably tries to move on to something else with that TBS championship. It looks like Mina Shirakawa, I'm assuming, is going to be the next challenger for the AEW Women's Championship. They didn't even have a match for that, and it was a short segment, but I thought it hit all the right notes. With the Mariah May, Mina Shirakawa championship celebration. It didn't need to be long. It's just, hey, let's salute my friend. Hey, let's party. Oh, now I've got a champagne bottle. I'm going to blast my friend over the head with the champagne bottle, swing and a miss, and now we're off to the races there. So they seem to hit all the right notes to me for Full Gear. So I am excited to see what happens tomorrow night on Dynamite.
By the way, sir, did a little research on Busted Open and asked the producers there, okay, so what's the longest match women for AEW? We saw it on Saturday. It was a shade under 20 minutes. The longest women's match is Mercedes against Statlander. So just think about that. And first of all, to have one women's match, could be better than that. But okay. I would have preferred a couple, but I mean, that was the Spotlight women's match. And I just think that, with Mercedes, my thing I was thinking about, Gabe, is, so why don't we see more Mercedes matches like that? We see more character than actual bangers,
So I think it's a number of different things. Like, for years, she was in that WWE style. And it's just different. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm just saying it's different, right? Mm-hmm. The WWE style of working, just a little bit different. And she got beat up. She got beat up wrestling that New Japan Pro style wrestling. And I think because she hasn't wrestled that much, we haven't seen her put on a bunch of TV matches. She's not Orange Cassidy opening up every episode of Dynamite coming out to put her TBS Women's Championship on the line. She's been relying on that character that she's built, the CEO. So I think it's a number of different things it's a slightly different style. So she wasn't necessarily, I think she was starting to get there, and then she gets hurt. She's out for a long time. And now you have to reacclimate yourself to this different style than you've been wrestling your entire life, and you haven't been wrestling that much. In my mind, it's a situation where she's finally shaken off all the rust from her injury, and now she's finally comfortable wrestling in that AEW New Japan style, where I think we're going to start to get more of these. And maybe Chris Statlander is just that good and helped carry her at that point. But I believe that this was two highly skilled women that we're going to see more out of Mercedes going forward, of matches like that.
Man, I thought it was fantastic because the story is that Mercedes can't put a Statlander away. So many near falls. And I just thought that was excellent the way that they both laid it out. And Mercedes comes out on top, and I saw her press conference afterwards, and she's just like, she's just so good. She gives me my best challenge. That says a lot because Mercedes has had a number of matches with Willow Nightingale. And so the idea that Mercedes says that Statlander gives her, her toughest match, that says a lot for Statlander. So I just thought that, just like the card, that match really delivered.
Yeah, that match delivered. MJF, Roddy Strong delivered, and you had the little Adam Cole thing to kind of leave you hanging going forward with that. It was just a really well put together pay-per-view for AEW.
However, we have to take care of the Bryan side of things, because of the pre-show. Now, again, this whole thing with this Big Boom.
Wait, you want to talk about bringing the boom? You want to talk about Big Boom AJ, the Rizzler?
Yeah, and here's why I want to talk to you about it. So, I do Sundays Busted Open to represent GKW. We represent GKW. I bring GKW to Series XM, which is always fun. Gabe, there's a caller that called in that was from Delaware that drove to the pay-per-view in Newark, New Jersey.
In Newark.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a dry spell, right?
Sure.
There's wrestling deserts, man. It's just like,
I'm sure.
You're in that area and you're like, there's never a pay-per-view in my area. I'll drive. The guy drove 3 hours to Newark to see the pay-per-view. Okay. And the reason why he did is because AEW delivers. He wanted to see great wrestling, top to bottom, 5 hours. He's going to do all that driving. He wanted to go see the pay-per-view. He said that there was 4 people around him that got there an hour beforehand, before the show, and they were late. And they sat down, and the guy says, "Hey, we just came here to see Big Boom AJ and the Rizzler." And the guy said, "Well, that was the pre-show. They're gone. They left. They came.
What?
They came to the show to see specifically Big Boom AJ, and they's like, yeah, you know what? The real card's about to start now. You mean they're not wrestling anymore? No, they're gone, and they left. 4 seats empty in the second level."
I don't get it. Like, I never saw these people, understood these people until they came into the world of professional wrestling. I thought the Rizzler, who I didn't know his name at the time, I thought he was like the younger brother. Did not realize that he's not even a family member. Didn't even realize any of this. But apparently, like, one of the clips that they put out on social media is like the 3rd most viewed wrestling social media clip of the year. So it just kind of gives you an idea of, hey, good on AEW for tapping into this. Just because I don't get it doesn't mean that it's bad. And look, all the credit in the world to Big Boom AJ for breaking his foot the day before, not telling a soul, and then going out there and delivering a pretty decent match. Like, it wasn't terrible. It was, I mean, yeah, he hasn't wrestled in 20 years or whatever, and QT Marshall's a vet's vet, right? He's going to make sure that you're not getting yourself in harm's way. But the whole thing was great. The spear, you know, it was stupid, dumb entertainment. It was a perfect match to put on the pre-show, and it was so low risk with putting somebody who's that popular, the Costco guys, apparently. Good on AEW. It was just a good business move.
See, that's why Brian's on the show, because he gets that stuff. You and I are too busy. We don't have time for the Costco guy, the Rizzler. But, you know, from AEW standpoint, they need to have a little bump outside of the AEW audience. And so when you have these guys coming in, it's perfect booking too. I'm glad it wasn't on the main show. And, you know, I had to go back and watch it because I didn't watch it. I'm on a flight from Daytona, Florida, watching the main card. I knew it happened. I wasn't watching, and I wasn't interested, quite frankly.
Yeah, because it wasn't for you. You're a diehard wrestling fan. It wasn't for you. And again, it doesn't have to be for you. Like, you don't have to book wrestling for everyone at all times. And it was crazy because after, in the press conference, Tony's like, yeah, I've had people, I've tried to get into wrestling for years, friends of mine. And he's got them texting, oh, you got Big Boom AJ on the show. I can't believe it. Oh, I'm definitely watching. I'm not going to miss it. So there is an appeal, even though apparently we're just old and out of touch.
Just good for them. That helped. I don't know. I mean, that's for Brian. I have no idea, but just looking at everything that they've lined up, man, all of it works out, man, to the point where like somehow Takeshita and Ricochet gets lost in the sauce. That's how good it was this whole show. But I thought that Swerve Strickland would be guzzled a little bit more. If this was 5 minutes and Lashley just thrashed Strickland, I'd be fine with it. It went, I think, 12, a little bit, a shade over 12 minutes. But most of the offense went to Bobby Lashley to show his dominance against Swerve. So there's some more meat on the bone there as well.
Yeah, because Swerve, again, at this point, he's a made man in AEW. He can absorb that. I wouldn't have minded if that match or if the final match was and I mentioned this on the show, a Lesnar-Cena type of squash. Like when Lesnar, just squashed John Cena and just when Suplex City was born, I would not have minded either one because Orange Cassidy could take it. He's a made man in AEW. Clearly, Swerve could take it. If you wanted to show the dominance and do something like that, I think you could have. Ultimately, they decided to go in a little bit different direction. But both matches, I think, certainly delivered. Just maybe don't do the overbooked thing at the end. I know it worked out a couple of years ago when you did the overbooked thing and you had Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, debut at the same time. Yeah. Maybe we don't need that at the end of every pay-per-view. We move on because this week ESPN put out their Pro Wrestling 30 Under 30, J-Hood, and I, for one, was shocked at who ended up at number 1, Dirty Dominic Mysterio. Number 1 in ESPN's 30 Under 30. MJF comes in at number 2 and Tony Storm at 3. Rounding out the top 5, Rhea Ripley was 4. Mariah May, current AEW Women's World Champion, is number 5. Were you as surprised as I was that Dominic Mysterio was ranked the number one pro wrestler by ESPN under the age of 30?
Dom's under 30 with that mustache? You sure?
That's
He looks much older.
what the birth certificate says.
Okay, I was surprised to see that. So I guess if I was making my list, Dirty Dom obviously would be in the top 5. I just thought that Rhea Ripley would be at the top of that list,
Yeah,
and everything
100%.
that she's meant to the business. And here's why I would have Rhea Ripley. It's not she's number one 30 under 30 because she's a good woman's wrestler. She's surpassed that, Gabe. I mean, it's more than just she's a good women's wrestler. She means a lot to the entire industry because of the way she looks and her dominance. I think we can get away from female male in this situation. I mean, because she beats up Dom like she beats up Liv Morgan. So I think that she's everything that WWF wanted from China and more.
She was carrying Monday Night Raw at different points during this year.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of Monday Night Raw, I mean, whatever your favorite show but Monday Night Raw is the gold standard of professional wrestling, right? Like it's Raw. It's Monday Night Raw. It's the one thing that's existed forever. And she was carrying the flagship show in all of professional wrestling at times this year with the storylines that they had. At the beginning of the year within within the Judgment Day, and then when she leaves Judgment Day, she's still carrying it up until her injury. And I know some people were kind of knocked for injuries, like for example, our guy Vikingo, who was number 4 last year, spent a lot of the year on the shelf, so he falls down to 13, understandably. But it's not like Rhea Ripley's been out for 6 months.
Right.
Like she's returning sooner than thought and going to be wrestling at War Games in a mask to protect, the different injuries she has to her face. So again, she still ends up at number 4 on the list, but I would have had her as the number 1 wrestler under the age of 30.
I would as well. If I'm going to make my list, Rhea Ripley be on the top, but then let's go to Toni Storm because just the way she captivated an audience. She said, by the way, we should bring this up, that she said that Toni Storm's retiring.
Yes.
I don't know what that means. What do you mean you're retiring? She says that Mariah May can carry the water now for AEW, that she's the face of AEW. So that means that Toni is coming back, but as whom? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she's retiring the timeless gimmick. Who knows? I just assumed that meant she was going to be the one that interrupted the championship celebration Saturday night as part of Full Gear. Obviously, she did not show up. So they're going to be saving that. They went a different direction, which I think ended up being good and ended up working out. Yes, Toni Storm is not done, but maybe timeless. Maybe she feels like she's taken the timeless gimmick as far as she can and comes back as a different character. And she ends up, her career is going to be known as the female Chris Jericho of just how many times can you reinvent yourself?
I just remember her being in Chicago, getting her own, award, and her stumbling up the up the ramp, and just in a theatrical way, like, "Oh, I've fallen. I have to get up and get my award," that kind of thing, and just not cheers, not boos, but just a standing ovation from the crowd, like an award show. Like it's kind of like that, not like whistling and all that, just an appreciation. Like you rarely get that in wrestling, like an appreciation just for the performance, that kind of thing. I think that Toni Storm did a lot to reinvent her character, and shout out to Tony Khan for doing that. It's his idea, by the way. That's his idea. There's a collaboration between Toni Storm and Tony Khan to put this together, and I just think that worked. That became must-see for us. W. So Ripley, Toni Storm. I think I'm putting Dom third only because he's always been in this whole love triangle vortex.
Who is Dom outside of being somebody else's man? Like
he was just a worker.
Yeah, like who is his character other than being Rhea Ripley's boyfriend to now Liv Morgan's boyfriend? Ends up kind of being the punching bag a little bit. And look, he's playing the character. He knows the assignment and is doing precisely what he needs to. And it's been fantastic. But in order for him to be number 1, I'd like to see him stand on his own 2 feet a little bit more.
Eventually at some point. Yeah. He has just become this chicken shit heel that everyone just dislikes, because if it's not him beating up his own father, then it's him always being around hot women. So there's always either jealousy or hate or whatever it is that Dom's always involved in. And so from a guy that when this show started, like Dom Mysterio, NXT, this guy, I mean, he's nothing like his dad. He's too stiff, too tall, all this. Character matters. To the point where we don't break down his wrestling at all. We break down the situations that he's in, and that's the essence of the entertainment of WWE.
Where do you put Kyle Fletcher? Fletcher came in at 8, and I feel like it's recency bias if he kind of climbs a little bit higher than that. But I look at the other AEW performers who ended up in the top 10 on this list. You mentioned MJF, Tony Storm was 3, Mariah May was 5, Takeshita ended up coming in at 6, Perry at 7, then Kyle Fletcher was 8, and then Daniel Garcia was right behind him. So the good news for AEW is you've got a lot of these performers under the age of 30 where WWE is a little bit older. But I really like the trajectory that Kyle Fletcher is on right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, so we couldn't make him higher than he is now because now there's a rocket ship on his back, which is great. I probably would have moved Takeshita up past Mariah May. Here's why. That's also recent. She's just now the champion. She was always like underneath Tony Storm, and they were
the understudy.
Together. Yeah. So, but for her to be 5th on this list, I wouldn't do that. I probably would have had Takeshita because he's had great matches. And I think he's going to even have a more brighter 2025. So Ripley, Storm, Dom, MJF, and then maybe Takeshita at 5 for me.
Okay.
I think that if I had my list, that would be my choices.
I mean, Braun Breaker finishing outside the top 10 was interesting to me.
I
feel
year.
Like, next year he's going to be top 5. Like, I have no doubt. The bump he took on Monday night, where he just full bore just decided to jump stomach first into the announcer desk. That was a creative spot and a spot where not very rarely when I'm watching pro wrestling, especially just a Monday Night Raw, where he just did what? And again, editing and all that, but it was, I thought that was a pretty wicked bump that he ended up taking when he tried to spear Ludwig Kaiser on the outside.
I ought to be young again. Boy, if I did that, I'd be in traction. I'd be doing this in the hospital bed, doing this show. I mean, right? God almighty. Yeah. He would be on that list too for me, Gabe, as well. And it just shows you again how bright the business is when you have all these young stars under 30. MJF, the reason why that I'll leave him in that top 5, and you can make a case for him to be outside that 5, is that he was absent, making movies, and he wasn't around a lot. Did he make a real major impact in 2024? Did he really?
Not really. But he's still incredibly talented. Like, I understand putting him at the bottom part of the top 5. Did he have a huge impact? I would argue no. But when he's there, you pay attention.
You do. I was just confused, like the match that he was in, though, at Full Gear. It's kind of like, well, it has to be a gauntlet for Roddy Strong to take him on, so then Adam Cole can eventually take him on. It's kind of like, what was that match for? And it was early in the card, so MJF was pissed. He's like, well, if I'm not going to be at the beginning of the card, put me early so I can get out of here. Yeah. I'm not going to be at the bottom of the card. Just get me out of here. Let's have a good match. I'm out.
Yep. That's exactly what happened.
To talk that much shit, by the way, about someone's parents and then still get over, that's a hell of a trick, man. Yeah. You're supposed to, by the way, traditionally, you're supposed to lose that. If you you're not supposed to win.
You talking about one parent literally murdering another parent? Yeah, no, that's the type of heat where your shoulders end up on the mat. But no, he's MJF.
That's the way it's supposed to be, but it's different in AEW, I guess.
We've got a big one coming up this weekend, and we're going to have some of the final pieces of the puzzle get put together right before the Survivor Series War Games PLE for WWE. Presumably, it's going to be Bayley as the mystery 5th member for the babyface side in the Women's War Games match. And we are going to have a face-to-face confrontation featuring 2 members of the OG Bloodline in Roman Reigns and CM Punk, also happening Friday night on SmackDown. What are you looking forward to most? Right now, 5 matches, Hood, on the card. The aforementioned War Games matches, and then 3 championship matches. Gunther taking on Damian Priest. Braun Breaker in a triple threat match defending his Intercontinental Championship against Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser, and LA Knight taking on the returning Shinsuke Nakamura for the United States Championship.
Do we have a IC title match? Is it locked in now? Do we have that?
It is. That is a triple threat. It is on the card.
Okay.
But worth noting, no Cody Rhodes. And that match, against Kevin Owens has already been announced for main event on December 14th.
Before we get there, let's talk about that for a second. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. You and I need to break this down. So I have said all along that Kevin Owens is right. If you just ask your wife, I'll ask my wife tonight. Hey, here's a layout of Kevin Owens that is friends with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. And there's a match for Bad Blood in which Cody Rhodes needs a partner, and he chooses a guy that he's been against in Roman Reigns. So also Kevin Owens has been battling this guy for 4 years. Before even Cody came back to the company, Kevin Owens has been battling the bloodline. And so Cody chooses a guy that he does not like and does not respect very much in Roman Reigns. Is Kevin right? So should Kevin be in that match? I think 99 times out of 100 people would say, you know what? Kevin is right. And then Randy Orton's also part of this as well. Randy Orton trying to play peacemaker, hits Kevin Owens, and Owens eventually comes around and gives Randy Orton a pile driver. Is Kevin right? Kevin is right. Now, Kevin is right. Now, on Friday Night SmackDown from Salt Lake City, I thought was interesting because Cody had the promo of his life to go against Kevin Owens.
Oh, Cody lied. Cody lied like a dog in that promo, too.
Well, but he makes it seem
like he was gaslighting Kevin. Roman Reigns asked me. Roman Reigns did not ask for bleep, man. You guys were standing in the ring, and you put your hand out for Roman to give you that contract. Roman didn't ask you for anything. You inserted yourself. So I don't want to hear this, Roman asked me it was the right thing to do, because that's not at all what happened. That is revisionist history, my friend.
See? And that's why Kevin's right. But then Cody tried to cover up and says, I thought it was the right thing to do. But you, Kevin, you believe that you should be the man around here. You don't believe in you. Everyone respects you, but you don't believe in you. And like Kevin's just standing there like, really? Really? So still you think that you're right. So ask someone you think is right. So this won't be a Survivor Series, but this definitely is in for Saturday night's main event. So this means that we will not have Cody Rhodes Championship defended at a PLE, a tentpole PLE in Survivor Series, which is a shift in philosophy, Gabe, because it's like, it's one of your major events. And from Triple H's standpoint, we got a world title match. It's Gunther and Damian Priest. But what about the man? Saturday night's main event is better. That says something about how big this company is.
Oh, yeah, because they also want to make they want to make Saturday night main event mean something. They want to make it big, right? Like they don't want to make it what Battle of the Belts is in AEW, where it's like, this is the thing we got to do. Like they have this deal where I think it's 5 dates on NBC. So they don't want to waste those opportunities. Yes, they're excited about being on Netflix, and USA's been a partner forever, and the CW for NXT. But you are on one of the major networks 5 prime times. You get 5 opportunities at this. So I think it's, putting Cody Rhodes in a match, which I think he should lose, by the way, putting him in a match on Saturday night's main events, it's huge. It's going to draw eyeballs to that product. And it sends a message early in this reincarnation of this event that, hey, these Saturdays, they're going to matter.
So, Gabe, for the title on Saturday night's main event, or is it just a grudge match?
No, I mean, it's for the title.
So you agree with Brian.
KO should win, man. KO should win because Cody's wrong, man. Like Cody's wrong. He's a wrong baby face. He's lying through his teeth. Kevin is the shining beacon of justice here. And if there is any justice, he will defeat Cody Rhodes. Like he doesn't have to have it for long. If you want the championship to factor into whatever's going to happen with Cody and The Rock and Cody and Roman and Rock and Roman and all these different things once we get to 2025, then have him drop it at Royal Rumble. But I think KO is doing some of the best work, and he's 100% right. He deserves to beat Cody. And it would kind of it would make Cody actually feel like, he can be beat, right? It would give you this feeling of, Okay, so it's not just, oh, Cody's just going to roll until he takes on the bloodline again. Oh, Cody's actually, okay, he's not invincible.
Rematch on Netflix. First show on Netflix on Raw. Want to do
Yeah,
that?
you could do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I just think before I know that it says on the bottom third here, if you're watching on YouTube, War Games preview, but we need to talk about that because
we did.
that was huge on Friday, man. Just the kind of face to face with Cody, but Cody gave a hell of a promo, man. He sounded like his dad. It was great, and it just gives me more anticipation for that matchup when it takes place. But that's not why we're here. You asked about about War Games.
What are you most excited about for War Games? Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens. That's what I'm excited for. I got bad news for you. They're not on the card.
Well, it's not on my format sheet here, but we had to talk about it. It's not my format. But we had to talk about it, man, because I just thought that was phenomenal TV. Because finally they got a chance to see each other one-on-one, and it's gonna be a fun match. So I love the idea that we get Paul Heyman coming out there, red shirt, by the way, not a full suit, just red shirt and dark suit. Well, I'm a big guy too. You got to make sure, look, you get hot in these suits sitting around all day. It's a nice red shirt.
Am I looking into it too much of thinking that, because again, they do subtle in the WWE. So many times we've seen Solo come out just a red t-shirt underneath with the suit coat. Am I looking too far into it if I noticed, hey, that's kind of a look Solo Sikoa's had in the past with Paul Heyman's rocking on Saturday night?
No, I think we should bookmark it. But do you think Paul should go back to his abusers? I mean, they abused him. They put him through the table, did they not?
They put him through a table. No, I do not believe that they should go back to the abusers. But also, I think that there's going to be an interesting thing that plays out here. And as CM Punk and Roman were jawing at each other, and I believe everybody on social media had pointed out saying, Roman's, hey, he's my wise man. And CM Punk saying, we'll see. I'm wondering if there are hurt feelings from Paul Heyman because Roman didn't reach out. Roman didn't reach out to Paul after WrestleMania. And then by the time he reached out, whatever number Paul, obviously Roman had for Paul had been disconnected. Yes. So I don't know. I don't know if there's some hurt feelings. So now Paul, being Paul, is going to be devious and ultimately backstab Roman. I don't know, but I think it's all very interesting, and I'm so glad they went the CM Punk route versus just having Seth Rollins. I was so scared of having Seth Rollins vehemently say, "Hey, I am never going to be teaming with this guy." And yeah, the bloodline cost Seth. And he could have easily, nope, that's going to be my spot. I want to get my revenge on the bloodline, even if it means I have to go back on something I said last week. And that's not the way they went. They did something where Paul went, hey, I'm reaching back to my Rolodex. They've had a couple of interactions that I've seen on social media, people bringing back Punk in his initial promo, calling out Roman Reigns, saying, hey, I was the original Paul Heyman guy. Mm-hmm. The promo that CM Punk had on Solo Sikoa not that long ago where Paul, please take me with you.
Yeah.
So I think, again, some nice, interesting callbacks. So I'm so glad it's CM Punk instead of Seth Rollins.
There are plenty of breadcrumbs to lead into something like that where Paul, and it will come down to Roman versus CM Punk as far as the tug of war for the wise man after Survivor Series, because there's going to be a face-to-face. I'm sure there'll be more promo time. And plus, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre over. That feud is over. So now it's going to you freshen up Punk for something different, something new.
Well, and that something different, something new could also involve Seth Rollins because we have not revisited that yet. So the fact that Punk stepped up, Rollins didn't, can add some layers to that. And also worth mentioning that CM Punk, because yesterday WWE was making a big deal out of it being his 1 year since he has returned, released backstage footage from Survivor Series last year when he returned in Chicago. And CM Punk released a message on Instagram thanking all these different people. And of course, the background photo that he decided to use was Seth Rollins yelling and flipping him off from his return a year ago. So, not very subtle of, hey, unfinished business there with Seth Rollins as well.
Which again, this is what you do with great storytelling. There's all of these different layers to it, different tentacles to it. And it could be anything. And you could build it toward Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And this is why the WWE is the best at this, and actually better now than they have been in years, because it's all this rampant speculation. this rampant speculation, Gabe, is great to be able to see what's happening. So, I mean, when it comes to this PLE from Vancouver, I really believe that just the idea that Bronson Reed and Jacob Fatu's on the same team is great. CM Punk being part of this as well. You know, if you're a Punk fan, you know you got prayers up that you can stay healthy and get out of this thing healthy.
God,
Because
I just, for the
you
love
know,
of all things holy, do not let him take a tsunami. For the
yeah,
love of all things that are
telling
holy,
you,
do not let him take a tsunami.
brother.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Because we know that Punk is put together with tongue depressors and Elmer's glue at this point in time in his career because we've seen him get healthy, injured before. But here's the big question that I have regarding CM Punk, and that's this. So Punk, he's done it all. The one thing he wants is to be able to main event at WrestleMania. And I'm trying to find out if there's a path between now and WrestleMania for him to get there. Is there a path for him to main event one of the two nights? And I'm trying to figure out, is it for the World Championship that's held by Gunther? Is it with Cody? Like, how does he get? Because he wants to do it. I'm just trying to figure out with everything that's going on, and there's a lot bloodline-wise, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Bronson Reed. I mean, there's a lot. How does Punk get there?
I don't know, because I always assumed it was going to be World Heavyweight Championship and him and Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship night one of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Even though, like, Punk's a stickler. That's not going to be good enough for Punk.
Yeah.
When he says main event WrestleMania, he means the last match of WrestleMania.
Correct.
Because I understand there's two nights and there's a main event on night one, there's a main event on night two. All the posters that we saw from, and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, they main evented WrestleMania, and I'm putting main event in air quotes. Whose picture was on all the different posters all over social media? It was the main event of night two. It was still Roman Reigns and Cody. I didn't see any posters of those guys all standing against each other. So Punk knows. How do you main event night two? And to me, that's somehow you have to get. It's not going to happen for him this year. I think you have to get in that undisputed title picture somehow. But this year, it's still going to be, if The Rock is around, The Rock's going to be in that main event of WrestleMania 41. He just is. Whether it's against Cody, whether it's against Roman, like, that's just the way it is. And I don't know if main eventing WrestleMania on night two is in the cards for CM Punk.
How exciting does it have to be, Gabe Neitzel, if you're Triple H? I saw him quoted this recently said that if it's left up to me, the company would close. That if it was left up to me to put all this together and not listen to the fans, that it's not about what I want. If it was about what I want, we probably wouldn't exist. Which is a big statement saying, look, they've got this all written out all the way probably through WrestleMania, probably through the start of the summer, and just to wait to see how it unfurls. Week after week, PLE after PLE, just slow cook. There is no, hey, I hate you, you hate me, let's wrestle, and we build it for 2 weeks the way it was under Vince. I hate you, you hate me, let's just do some kind of thing, and then in 3 weeks we put together a 8-minute match. That's what wrestling used to be under Vince. This is all about a slow burn. Everything across the board. Even here with what is happening here with the women that we're talking about here, because you got so many moving parts with Rhea Ripley, and you've got Bianca, and Bianca seemed heelish as well, by the way, had a little bit of an attitude that we saw there too, which I found interesting.
She might be mending those fences after Bayley helped her win that advantage match last night.
It's interesting. Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. Like, all this is a slow burn to get up.
But look, they didn't need to do a War Games match for the women. Like, this is the way they put together this War Games match for the women. And look, maybe some of it was because Rhea got hurt, so they weren't quite sure what they could do. And now you have another, in Jade Cargill, who is hurt and apparently could be out from anywhere between 3 months and a year. Some pretty serious injuries that she's apparently dealing with. Like, this was just, let's get a bunch of baby faces and a bunch of heels and just throw them in the cage. Like, that's lazy storytelling. That's where, again, we talk about, like, the Hell in a Cell, and they've gotten rid of the Hell in a Cell gimmick in terms of a pay-per-view because it felt like you had to force some sort of feud inside the Hell in a Cell. But if you have the right feud, it makes sense to be in Hell in a Cell, the way that we got with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Like, this isn't that War Games. The word war is right there. You're inside a steel cage. Like, this is grudge match type of stuff, which is new bloodline, old bloodline. Like, that makes sense to be inside War Games. 5 heels and 5 baby faces just randomly in there. It doesn't. I'm sure the match will deliver itself. It just, based on the way WWE has done things under Triple H with all this storytelling, the story is severely lacking for War Games to make sense for this for these 10 women.
I guess my idea would be, because of the lack of heat, this is the reason why War Games started off in 1987, because the Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes team hate each other, because we saw it come out on TV every single week. You need to put them in a cage. You need to put them in a cage with a roof on top of it, because there was so much damn outside interference every single show, right? So that's why they had to put a lid on the thing, so that way you're locked in. There's no way in, no way out for sure. That's why War Games took place. And because there was massive, huge, immense heat between those two factions at the time. With this here with the women, if it's War Games Survivor Series, I don't mind them being a Survivor Series traditional match.
Yeah, sure.
But as far as like being in a cage, like,
it just doesn't quite connect for me. Like, again,
fine.
like,
it is fine. It's fine. It just doesn't match the heat, Gabe. That's the whole thing, you know. So So I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. And I guess LA Knight, Shinsuke, I guess you throw it on here.
No, it's fine.
I wish you had more build for that, because I think it could be better, but the match itself will be fine.
Shinsuke is the new Kabuki. That's what's happened now. He's got the hairs over his eyes. That's what he is. I just tall Kabuki. I'm like, what is he doing? It's like the same guy. He's got the cloak, and his hair is over his eyes, and it looks like he hadn't slept since the Carter administration. And you see him, and it's just kind of like, okay, so he's kind of like this Night Stalker kind of gimmick, and that's fine. It'll be a fine match. The one thing I do question about is the build of Gunther against Damian Priest. It's the same, but this non-responsive Gunther is strange to me. Like, are you building him, or are you trying to chop him down? Like, he's not saying anything, and he seems like a step and a half slow, trying to go after Priest. It's weird.
I think he's going to win and get his confidence back. I think he'll win and get the mojo back. But I enjoy them giving this character a little bit of a wrinkle, because he's been so invincible. Losing to Cody Rhodes clean in the middle of the ring, that's going to affect your confidence. I like that.
What about Priest? What if he loses? What happens then?
Yeah. Look, Jesus. I don't know, go back to battling Judgment Day. Who knows? I don't know what's next for Priest, but I just feel like Gunther's still going to win.
Well, you know why I asked the question is because Priest is a really good singles wrestler and very popular. I'm just saying, like, a loss to Gunther again, that's like, okay, so where's it put him in the whole picture of things? Like, what's next?
I don't know if he has it next. I don't know if he has. Yeah, maybe it's him and McIntyre. Maybe they do that whenever Drew McIntyre returns to the WWE.
I can't have Judgment Day just out there trolling and not defending their tag team championships on a regular basis, and Carlito dancing out there, like, and then the man, Damian Priest on the outside looking in, not doing anything. I mean, he's viable. I like him, and I like seeing him on my TV doing stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll get back to that. Again, they defended them. They defended the tag team championships Monday night.
By the way,
they're already starting to plant the seeds of them kicking Finn out.
So we're clear that Braun Breaker is a babyface now, right?
He's either a babyface or a cool heel.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out which one, because Braun Breaker is famous against Ludwig Kaiser. I think it'll be good. I think it will.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's going to be good. Yes.
Just trying to figure out what Braun Breaker's, character is. Like Ludwig Kaiser, I think we've said this 6 months ago, there is money in him being a singles. Mm-hmm. I think that still is the case. Sheamus, just the old veteran there, just to make sure he goes clobbering people. But Braun, I'm just trying to figure out, like, he gets barks from the crowd. I don't know how they feel about him in this match. Is he a babyface?
Well, so that's the thing. Like, because he was clearly the babyface wrestling Kaiser. But 2 weeks ago on Raw, when he wrestled Sheamus, he's the heel.
Interesting.
So is there a word for that? I don't know. Is there a word for a tweener in professional wrestling? I don't know. This is one of those rare cases where he feels like he's this tweener.
Character babyface. That's what you just told me. It's like he's a character babyface, not a babyface, but a character babyface based on how the crowd reacts to him.
I guess. Yeah, because the crowd is always going to react to those, much like they do with Brody King over in AEW. You start barking, the crowd's going to bark right along with you.
Oh man, I think that's great. All right.
What did you have as your matches of the week?
Well, sir, I thought, I think we should probably get Full Gear out of the way about Moxley and Orange Cassidy, and I just thought that it was a great story. I love that story because Orange kept fighting from underneath. Like as soon as he got some momentum, got cut off by Moxley. As soon as he gets momentum, cut off by Moxley. I thought they told a great story there. We talked about Mercedes and Statlander, Ospreay and Fletcher. Those are my 3 favorite matches I saw at Full Gear.
You're not going to get a disagreement from me in terms of my 3 favorites on that card. Jay White, Hangman Adam Page, I thought delivered. So I think that, yes, but those were the same 3 I had. If I were going to throw one outside of that, I really enjoyed, we were just talking about, the tag team championships. I really enjoyed what the Judgment Day and War Raiders put together on Monday Night Raw. I know it ended up winning with, have a little outside of interference, but it really feels like the War Raiders are trending in a direction where they're going to win those tag team championships.
They could have done that in Glendale, and I would have been fine with it. I was surprised they didn't win. Actually, in the middle of the match, I'm like, War Raiders are going to win this thing, aren't they? And they didn't. And I was just like, okay.
But they're fantastic. Eric and Ibar are just they're 2 big dudes who can get the job done. The crowd's behind them right now. I enjoyed that match on Monday night.
I know it's a little bit in the weeds, but when you realize that there are no more tickets to sell, it's a legit sellout, give them something. Change the match. Give them a title match. Give them a title change. I mean, they came out of nowhere. And where are we on with daylight savings time? Were they 2 hours behind? Are they on Pacific time now? They came out early, so that's a 5 o'clock show, right? Sold out at 5 o'clock, and they're in the building. Like, give them a title change. I mean, those 2 are not defending the titles anyway.
No,
so just give it to the War Raiders. I think the crowd would have popped for that.
Yeah, I think they'll eventually get it. Anything else you wanted to add to the list?
Well, I liked the Kaiser and the Braun Breaker matchup.
Yeah. I wish it was a little bit longer before you had the interference, but again, it certainly had the spot of the week for me with the way that Braun just dove into that table. I still can't get over it.
It's hard sometimes, Gabe, for us when we do match of the week, and I know Triple H loves a disqualification finish because he's the polar opposite of Tony Khan in that regard. Because that's how Triple H grew up. Like, disqualification finish. But some of these guys are busting their ass, and you don't expect outside interference, and it happens like, You get the Cobra. It was fine. Why'd you interrupt it? 15 minutes. I was invested in this, and all of a sudden, here comes Sheamus, that same outfit with the white shirt, the leather black tie. Like, come on, brother. It's a good match. Why'd you interrupt it? Okay, you tell them the story. I get it. So.
I should also note, really just quickly for news and notes, we were wondering if this was going to happen, and then it oddly did last night, but it happened before the show, so then they played it back. There is, much like we saw a women's U.S. championship go to SmackDown, a women's Intercontinental Championship is coming to WWE Monday Night Raw, with a tournament to follow to crown the first ever Intercontinental Champion on the women's side.
My 2 choices, and I don't know how this works out show-wise, but I would like to see either Chelsea Green or Michin be a champion.
Dude, you've got me so like Chelsea Green is. She needs to be one of them. She needs to be I know she's in the and it looked when they did the U.S. title, they only did the SmackDown women, so my guess is that's her only shot. and we'll see what they do in terms of a bracket on the Raw women's side. But I am telling you, Chelsea Green needs to be one of those first champions. Like maybe she's never a women's world champion, but she needs to have one of those, and I think she would be fantastic for it.
It's just a reward for the work that she's done. I know that she doesn't want to do that. She's told us as much as like she just wants to be involved in stories. It's not even about a championship for her, but I think it's just a crowning achievement for her
To
being
be the first ever.
Yeah, and it's just being a fine character in WWE. That's the other thing.
It's a reward for the great work she's done.
Listen, Gabe, I know that we've had a great show and we got so much more that we could be talking about, but I could smell the food in the kitchen right over here. I can the roast is wafting here on this Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to you. We are thankful to you for Good Karma Wrestling. For those of you listening on the podcast, as it continues to grow, our YouTube numbers are coming up, and it's because of you. So we just want to just tell you thank you on this Thanksgiving for all that you've done to be able to support our show. There's so many wrestling podcasts out there, but you choose us. I'm so flattered that you choose us for Good Karma Wrestling. We continue to grow, and we're thankful. Be right there, honey. Be right there. Go ahead.
Comment, subscribe. Check us out, youtube.com/@GoodKarmaWrestling for all the different interviews we've done over the past year. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.